You are trading your life for money right now, and the exchange rate is a lie. I spent 43 years as a hospice care specialist working with some of the most successful people in the Pacific Northwest in their final months and years. I stayed in their estates. I shared their meals. I sat with them in the dark hours when fear kept them awake and everyone else had gone home. I was present for 82 of their deaths, and I am here to tell you that most of them were miserable, not in pain, not anxious, miserable, deeply, desperately unhappy in ways that all their success could not fix. I need you to understand something before we go any further. I am not going to tell you money does not matter. That would be dishonest. Money matters. I grew up during economic collapse. My mother lost her business in 1932, and we ate potato soup for 18 months. I know what financial hardship feels like. I know the panic of eviction notices, of choosing between medicine and groceries, of lying awake wondering how you will survive the month. That kind of poverty will destroy your body and your mind and your family. Money solves those problems. Anyone who tells you otherwise has never been truly desperate. But here is what I learned in 43 years of sitting at the bedsides of the wealthy. There is a point, and it arrives much earlier than you imagine, where more money stops helping and starts destroying. Not because money is corrupt, because what you give up to earn it cannot be recovered, and what you purchase with it is hollow. Let me tell you about Catherine Morrison. I cared for her from October of 1976 until she passed in March of 1977. She lived in an 8,000 square foot estate in Bellevue with 6 bedrooms, a swimming pool, a meditation garden, and grounds that required 3 full-time landscapers. Her deceased husband had been a founder at one of the major aerospace firms. She had more wealth than she could use in 20 lifetimes. Catherine was 81 years old and she was dying of congestive heart failure. She had 5 children. Not one of them visited in the 5 months I was with her. Not one. Her son in Arizona sent a card once. That was it. Catherine would sit in her library overlooking that meditation garden and weep. Not about death, about the fact that she had borne 5 children, and not one of them cared enough to come say goodbye. I asked her once near the end what had gone wrong. She told me that when her children were small, she and her husband were building their empire. They worked endlessly. They sent the children to private academies, summer programs overseas, anywhere that would keep them occupied. They were investing in their children's futures. They thought they were guaranteeing their children's success. You understand what she said to me? She said, "Patricia, I traded my children for wealth that they do not even need. I gave them everything except my time, and now I am dying surrounded by expensive things, and I am utterly alone." I stayed with Catherine until her final moment. Her children did not attend her memorial service. This is not an unusual story. This is the story I witnessed repeated over and over for more than 4 decades. The circumstances varied. The estates were in different cities. The fortunes came from different industries, but the isolation was the same. You need to hear this. You are probably reading this because you are working too hard. You are probably telling yourself that you are doing it for your loved ones. You are probably thinking that once you achieve some milestone, some target, some level of stability, then you will ease up. Then you will spend time with your kids. Then you will visit your father more often. Then you will invest in your friendships. Then you will breathe. I watched people die with this exact plan incomplete for 43 years. The money kept accumulating. The then never materialized. Let me tell you about another patient, Thomas Caldwell. I cared for him in 1985 in a high-rise apartment in downtown Seattle, 19 rooms. A view of Elliott Bay that would take your breath away. A Rothko in the dining room, an original Rothko. Thomas was a self-made entrepreneur. He had started with nothing, built a technology distribution company, and amassed a fortune that most people cannot fathom. He was proud of this, and he had every right to be. It is not simple to create something from nothing. He worked 16-hour days for 38 years. He missed his children's performances, their celebrations, their milestones. He told me he believed he was doing the right thing. He was ensuring they would never have to struggle like he did. Thomas was dying of COPD when I met him. He could not cross the room without gasping for air. He spent most of his time in a hospital bed in that apartment looking out at Elliott Bay through oxygen tubing. One evening I was checking his vitals and he grabbed my wrist. His grip was feeble but urgent. He looked at me and he said, "Patricia, I have spent my entire life collecting things. I have more possessions than anyone could ever use. And right now, lying here, I would give all of it, every cent, every asset, every painting for one more year with my wife." His wife had died 6 years earlier. They had been planning to sail together when he stepped back from work. He was always going to step back next year. Next year never arrived. She died of an aneurysm at 62, 8 months before his planned transition. Thomas died 4 weeks after that conversation. His children liquidated the apartment and the Rothko. I do not believe any of them kept anything of his. I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer truthfully in your own mind, not aloud. How much of your life are you currently delaying? How many meals have you missed with people you cherish? How many evenings have you spent working instead of connecting? How many times have you said, "I am sorry, I cannot, I have obligations"? How many times have you thought to yourself, "Eventually I will have time for this"? Eventually is a fiction you are telling yourself, so you do not have to face the exchange you are actually making. The research on this, by the way, confirms everything I observed. Scientists have studied this for decades now. They have discovered that once you have sufficient money to meet your basic needs and some stability, more money does not increase your well-being. Studies have found that life satisfaction plateaus around $80,000. More recent research has updated this, but the fundamental finding remains: after a certain threshold, more money does not purchase more contentment. But we keep pursuing it anyway. You know why? Because we can quantify money. We can watch it increase. We can compare it to others. It gives us something to chase. Contentment is harder to measure. Relationships are harder to track. We do not get bonuses for being attentive spouses or awards for checking in on our siblings. So we optimize for what we can count, and we let the things we cannot count fade away. And then we wake up at 81 like Catherine Morrison, surrounded by expensive gardens and nobody who cares. I want to tell you about someone different now, because I did not only care for miserable, wealthy people, I also cared for some who understood. Dorothy Chen, I cared for her in 1991 in a modest ranch home in Tacoma. By the standards of my usual patients, Dorothy was not affluent. She had a comfortable home, enough money to afford my services, and not much beyond. Her husband had been a community college professor. She had been a librarian. Dorothy was dying of pancreatic cancer. She was in significant pain most days, but here is what I remember about Dorothy. Her house was full of visitors. Her 4 children came every week. Her grandchildren came after school. Former library patrons came. Colleagues she had not seen in decades came. The house was small and cramped and always filled with laughter. Dorothy told me once that she and her husband had made a decision early in their relationship. They decided that they would never sacrifice time with their children for additional income. Her husband declined a position as dean because it would have meant working nights and weekends. Dorothy declined a management role at the Central Library for the same reason. They earned less money than they could have. They lived in a smaller house than they could have purchased if they had both worked more. But they ate dinner together every night for 37 years. They attended every concert, every match, every school event. They knew their children's companions. They knew their children's dreams. They were there. When Dorothy died, her children were holding her hands, all 4 of them. They were sobbing and telling her they loved her and thanking her for the life she had shown them. I have been present at many deaths. I can tell you that there is a distinction between dying surrounded by people who cherish you and dying surrounded by people who are calculating their inheritance. The distinction is everything. You may be thinking to yourself right now that this is simple for me to say. I am not in a competition anymore. I do not have a mortgage, children to support, education costs to save for. What do I know about the pressures you are facing? I know this. Every single person who sacrificed their relationships for wealth told themselves the same thing you are telling yourself right now. They all believed they had no alternative. They all believed the pressure was unique to them. They all believed that they were doing the right thing for their families. They were mistaken. And they only realized they were mistaken when it was too late to change it. The people who understood, people like Dorothy Chen, they had the same pressures. They had mortgages and children and expenses. They were not privileged people who could afford to opt out. They just made different choices. They said no to some opportunities so they could say yes to other things. They decided that their presence in their children's lives was more important than a larger home or a luxury vehicle. These were not simple choices. They involved compromises and losses, but they were choices. You have choices too. You are just pretending you do not because the choices are difficult. I want to tell you something else I learned from 43 years at bedsides. Nobody in all those years ever told me they wished they had worked more. Not one person. Not the executives, not the attorneys, not the physicians, not the people who built corporations and the people who inherited them. Not one single person said, I wish I had spent more time in meetings. But many of them wished they had worked less. Many of them wished they had been home more. Many of them wished they had put down the device, closed the computer, skipped the conference call. Many of them wished they had said yes to the camping trip, the dance recital, the family barbecue. Many of them wished they had been present for the moments that were happening around them while they were busy accumulating wealth they would never enjoy. I have one more patient to tell you about. His name was Robert Sterling. I cared for him in 1998. He was 89 years old and dying of renal failure in a waterfront home in Bainbridge Island. He was worth more than $90 million. Robert was different from most of my patients. He was not resentful. He was not isolated. His children visited regularly. His grandchildren treasured him. He had a peace about him that I rarely saw in people with his kind of wealth. I asked him about it one afternoon. I asked him how he had managed to be so successful without becoming miserable. He told me that when he was 44 years old, his business partner died of a heart attack, collapsed at 46, worked himself into the grave, Robert said. That was 1953. After the funeral, Robert went home and did something unusual. He calculated how much money he actually needed to live well for the rest of his life. He added a buffer for uncertainties. He arrived at a number and then he stopped. He stopped working 70-hour weeks. He stopped chasing the next acquisition. He let younger associates take over. He started coming home for dinner. He started attending his daughter's piano lessons. He started sailing with his wife. He started living. His colleagues thought he was foolish. They said he was walking away from opportunity. He told me that was exactly the point. He said, Patricia, I decided to walk away from opportunity so I could sit at the dinner table with my family instead. Robert Sterling lived for 45 more years after that decision. He had sufficient money for anything he desired. But what he desired, it turned out, was presence, and he gave himself permission to claim it. I am 98 years old. I do not know how much longer I have. Could be years, could be weeks, could be tomorrow. At this point, you stop pretending you can predict, but I know this. I have lived long enough to see entire generations make the same error. I have watched people sacrifice their lives for wealth they never use, for happiness they never experience. I have watched families fracture over inheritances that bring nothing but pain. I have watched people reach the end with full portfolios and empty souls. You do not have to join them. You can decide today that you have enough. You can decide that your presence is more valuable than your productivity. You can decide that dinner with your family is more important than another meeting. You can decide that calling your sister this week matters more than finishing that project tonight. These are choices. They are difficult choices, but they are yours to make. I am not telling you to abandon your career or discard your goals. I am telling you to be honest about what you are exchanging and what you are receiving in return. I am telling you to stop pretending that eventually will arrive on its own. I am telling you that the people you love will not be here forever, and neither will you. Robert Sterling calculated his number at 44 and gave himself 45 years of presence instead of 45 years of accumulation. What is your number, and when are you going to stop? I have said what I needed to say. I am tired now. The young person helping me with this recording says I should tell you to like and subscribe, but I do not really understand what that means. I just hope you paid attention. Your life is not waiting for you somewhere in the future. It is happening right now. Go live it while you still can.